So today we're continuing the work on our gauntlet. Yesterday's project, basically, this is how it ended up. So we're now all waterformed. This is why I waterformed these guys. You can see the shape it's taken. It's nice. It's already a little hard, which is nice. So fingertip. Now it's funny, determining when this is dry. If I hold this to my cheek, it's still got that cold, clammy feel to it. So I'm here on the West Coast, so it's usually fairly high humidity. Even though I have a dry room here, it takes a little while for it to be dry for sure. So if I'm going to be waxing this, I want to make sure it's bone dry. So I'll probably give it another day before I actually get around to doing it. What I'm looking for is that, for me anyway, I notice that if I hold it to my cheek and it's not damp anymore, it's got a very neutral feel to it. I don't feel that cold that I'm feeling from the leather. So anyway, that's for me, and after years of playing around with this, but take that as you may. The last thing you want to do is do all the forming and working on this, and then you go to wax it and you get the nice hot wax on there, and then all of a sudden it hits the water, the moisture in it, and the moisture reaches that critical point because the wax is hot, and the next thing you know, you got a shriveled up piece of bacon in your hands, and you're like, now I got to start all over again. So anyway, something to note. So those two pieces. Now I did most of the forming for this guy using my ball. Right, and I can do that a bit with this piece, but what I did is years ago we picked up a whole lot of these wooden bowls for doing our feasting with our group sort of thing. And again, I think this may have cost me all of $1 maybe at either Value Village or one of the secondhand stores. But I find that it's a perfect form when I'm doing things like shaping pieces like the rider, and then the knuckle guard just goes nicely into the bottom. And I can use that. Now, again, I soaked, right after I turned off the camera yesterday, I sammed. It's not sanding, samming. It's different. Sounds like sand. I'm saying sanding on the pickup on the mic, but I soaked this yesterday right after I got off the video, and turned the video off probably around I think it was around 2:30. This is still absolutely ice cold in my face, and actually I don't even have to. I can see that I can still form it. Now, I was talking about that plasticine effect. If you notice, when I bend this, it just nicely pretty much holds that shape that I give it. So you can really do a lot of really cool molding and tooling and all sorts of neat stuff when the leather's in this shape. So, but I wanted to give this a bit of a curve before I sew it together. So this is too wet to dye. I won't be dyeing this one today, and actually this is too wet to dye. So I'm going to give it another day before I do any of my dyeing. But it's going to fit rather nicely on the piece. And when the time comes, it'll give a nice guard effect. That's the way that goes. And then this piece will go directly underneath, like so. So that's where we are at with that right now. I hope you guys could see all that. Just realized I might not have been. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm going to cut out the bell that I need to attach to this end. And what I've done is, because I don't have the pattern for the actual bell, rather than trying to make one of my other patterns or maybe an adopted pattern off of this work, I'm going to use the tinfoil technique, show you how I do that. So what I'm doing is I've got the tinfoil I've just taken here. I'm going to actually get rid of some of it because I don't need this all, so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to end up doing here is taping up using masking tape and tin foil. I'm going to make a rudimentary pattern. So as you can see, I've taken the tin foil, I've wrapped it around my piece here, so you can see how it's fitting over the bell. This is the same thing I did for the rider, for the back, and for the finger plate. I did exactly the same thing. So I'm going to give a shout out. Finally tracked down where this pattern came from originally, or the gauntlet came from. Appears to be Rolf Longbow. So Sir Rolf is a member of the society, same society I'm a part of, the SCA. And he's adapted this pattern from, I believe he said it was Toril. So Pat, out there. What I'm doing right now is I'm just pushing this down so I can see the threads showing through. I don't know if you can see this with the lighting, but I'm marking the thread line around the entire cuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my marker and just give that a mark all the way around it. So I'm sorry for the length of the video yesterday. My goodness, an hour and a half is what I shot. Sure didn't feel like that here, but that's what it ended up. And if you stuck with me through the whole thing, it's kind of like a live feed. That's what I'm doing here. Is I'm basically, these are sort of dress rehearsals for me for doing live feeds, because I'd like to be able to stream these eventually and then put them up on my YouTube afterwards. Okay. So I've got that marked all the way around the edge. I'm not worrying about this on the bottom, on the top end, because that's kind of marked just by the fold. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take masking tape. I'm going to put it all the way around to give the tin foil some rigidity as I'm taking it off. And again, it's one of those things that I've learned over time. I've done this with all sorts of different patterns over the years, including some beautiful steel stuff I did years ago where, you know, there was no pattern. I had to actually work and crib off of actual pieces. And so doing it in such a manner that we're not damaging the piece is something I had to learn. So again, I'm not too worried about the wrinkles because I'm just going to flatten those out as I go. Now this is going to give me a really good approximation. Like there's going to be a little bit of slackness and things in it. As you're working, you need to work with it and keep that in mind when you're recreating the pattern later. I'm using long strips here at the moment, but short strips work. You can imagine it's like an old school back in the day when they used to make plaster casts for arm brakes and things. It's you can sort of imagine we're doing that, or you know, back in the days when we used to do paper mache models. Again, those of us that do that kind of thing, remember that. Now, if you have a scanner and that ability to actually just simply digitally scan the object and then create your pattern from that, that is a way to go as well, and it actually is the way to go, but I don't have that technology. So, and this is an old school technique which just about anybody can replicate. What I'll do is once I get this done, I'll cut the pattern off. And then I'll make a copy of it onto either cardstock or paper, something I can use later. And then I'll master it all onto a master copy, and I'll print it. Again, you can see this isn't rocket science. The idea is that once I get this cut off and laid in flat, it should give me the exact outside measurement I need in order to create the cuff, which I'm going to cut out and punch and do everything else with today, and have that added onto the back of the hand on this copy. Now the cost of patterns that I sell is basically to make up, it's for my time actually. What I really want and really looking forward to is just getting these patterns back out there so that you can either try to do these yourself and get other people into armor, yourself in armor, get other people into armor, with equipment that it's not incredibly expensive to make. I mean, the cost of leather is not cheap. But really the idea is enough of us doing this stuff to get our friends into this gear. There we go. All right, so now if this worked, you heard that right? Now if this worked, I should be able, remember right where actually what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove the end. I'm just going to do this with a knife. I could do it with a couple of other things, but I'm going to do it this way because it's the way I feel most comfortable. Yeah, comfortable with a knife. Tell us a story, Uncle William. Yes, yeah, cutting onions. Take the tip of your finger off and then spend several hours in the hospital where they can't cauterize it and stop it from bleeding. Yes, knives are fun. Anyway, and we're almost there. Okay. Let's check off this bit on the inside. And this is the nice thing about the tinfoil. I don't have to put a lot of pressure on here in order to remove it. And that way I'm not damaging my threads, so I can help it. There we go. All right, now those are joins at the bottom right there, so I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, you want to know something? I'm going to cheat. Find it. Again, I'm just doing that. Now the tin foil is nice because what it does is once I press down on it, it leaves a mark. So there's my join. Now if I wanted to, I could move the join over onto here so that it's all in the same spot. Rather than offset. Yeah, it matches. I want it to match, so I'm going to do it the same way. Okay, let's see if that worked. And there we have it. So, we have the matching pattern. Pretty simple. Now all I gotta do is copy that out onto a piece of paper. Make sure it actually is going to work. It looks good. You can see a couple of oddnesses to it. So that was probably just the threading. So once I draw that out on the paper, then I'll even that out. All right, I'm gonna just go grab myself some paper here. Off camera for a sec. Use my scissors. Should have had this first, but I didn't. But that's okay. I'm just using some craft paper here to do this. Let's out of the way here for a second. I can see the unevenness on the tin foil, so I'm just going to hold it back a bit. And this is just where my knife may have wandered a bit. So I tried really, really hard to match the curve with the masking tape. So, I mean, you can spend more time on it if you want. Okay. Just going to take my Sharpie. And the thing to remember is every time you copy a pattern, you're actually expanding the size of it a little bit. So that's something to always remember when you're cutting it out. So I'm going to cut this as close to the inside of the pattern as I can. And just so what happens is over time, if you're doing it this way, making copies of copies of copies of copies, your piece eventually is going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. Something to remember. So always try to work from your master. One copy. What I like to do is I use a fairly heavy, this time no oops, heavy cardboard material. Some people use like light aluminum template, tin templates. Those are great. But try never to lose your original master if you can at all help it. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this now. Just curious. Yeah, hopefully symmetrical. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, cut this out, then I'm going to fold it, see how symmetrical it seems to be. Looking at the original, it's hard to tell, but it does not look symmetrical. But I think that might have just been the rough cut. So. Find out the hard way. So let's do it and see what happens. There we go. Alright, so it was roughly not totally symmetrical that way. So now I'm fussing with the pattern. tinfoil master. Just to work out my symmetry if I can. Taking the time to get it right if possible, or as right as possible, that's what I'm trying to say. So, that and that. Now, I'm just looking at throw this down in here again, see what happens. See how far out I was. There we go. Sticky tinfoil. So again, keeping it to the inside of my black line. Looks about right. Okay. Now, the only thing I'm wondering about that looks pretty good, actually. Okay, so have a fairly decent working piece, I think. Now we're going to cut it out in leather. Keep the tinfoil master over there for now. Extra pieces of paper are always good to keep around. Now I'm going to make a little bit of room here so that I can cut out my leather again. Everybody back a bit. Don't make a mess. So again, I'm using the 10-ounce hide. Again, looking for cuts and folds. This is pretty icky, so we're not going to use that. I think I'm going to use this part right in here. So I try to use the leather economically. much as I can. Sometimes it's hard, especially depending on what it is you want a piece to do. It's a tear. Okay. I'm going to overcut this one for length, I think. So move it a bit. There we go. So I'm going to overcut this one for length a bit, just to make sure I have enough. Because the one thing about the cuff, and that was what I was checking with the tinfoil there at the end, was did I actually take into account the difference in creating the tinfoil master before. In other words, when I made that tinfoil master for this piece, I should have been a little more, I should have thought about this was when I was making that new tinfoil one, that it actually will fit here. Because again, when making the tinfoil copy off of this, there's going to be some discrepancies simply because, you know, I can't actually see through the tinfoil to make sure that I've got the actual line right. So it's just a thought that's going through my head. Like I said, random consciousness. All right. So. All right. And yeah, that's the product I use, tinfoil for making the copies. So. All right. I'm going to. So yes, I do use knives instead of scissors from time to time, especially when my hands are sore. So the other thing too is I can actually angle my piece, push it around too much. My hand is so sore today; it's hard to use the snips. Through here. Bring this down to a manageable size. There we go. So don't be doing this on your kitchen table. It's not good for your kitchen table. Ask me. Or actually, I should say, don't ask me how I know that. All right. Da, 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 da. Again, if you can, store your leather flat if you have the space for it. Okay. Where did you do? There it is. I lost my knife. And take the time, if your knife blade is dull, take the time to change it. You'll thank yourself. There we go. Okay, so out. So let's find out where we're out by. Okay. Just refining pattern even a little bit more. Let's see if I can do this with the. Nope, too dull. We'll do that right now. Again, I'm not trying to cut it all in one shot. I'm working my way through, even with a really sharp blade, just to make sure I've got it fairly clean. I'm just going to clean my edge a bit. Now what I'm going to do too is I can take this over to my rotary beveler on the machine, which is off camera, so I won't do that today or show you how that works today, but I will eventually set up for it because that means moving the cameras around. And can't really do that right now. I do have
a couple other camera options coming up, which will allow me to do things like picture-in-picture. I can do picture-in-picture with the editor I've got, but problem that I'm having is that I don't have enough cameras, actual cameras. So that was a little bit key. All right, and it's a little oversized there, but we're going to be coming back to about there with it. All right, let's take a look here. Start. So we're going to set one as the beginning. See, a little bit big. Yes. Just looking at where I want to start this. Right about there, looks good. Yep. I'm just setting my thread on my stitch marker. All the way around. Good. All right, set that aside. Pull you down. Yes, wumpity, wumpity, thumpity, thumpity. Here we go. Put you back over there. He said. The one tool I need, I think I moved it somewhere, and now I can't see where it is. curse of dropping things on a metal floor or a concrete floor is why do they always fall point first? This looks like it's okay. So. So, if I don't get this attached within the hour, I got about 20 minutes left here. What I'm going to do is off camera, I will finish attaching, stitching this on rather than forcing you to watch me. And then hopefully in part 4, we'll be doing all the dyeing and then getting the body of the actual gauntlet done, and then we'll spend the last part, the last video, doing the soft leather parts that basically will keep it on your hand. And then we'll do a test, make sure it's all right. We'll be on to the next. So again, remember, if you're liking what we're doing, hit that like button, make the algorithm work for us. And believe me, it does function, it does work. Subscribe, please, if you're interested in content. Interested in seeing us go to streaming. Share this with your buddies out there who may be interested. And if you are interested in any of the patterns, make sure you give me a shout. See what we can set you up with. Okay, so far so good. This is a nice shallow cuff, which is what I want. You can see it's a little bit uneven, but we can take care of that as we go. So right now, I think by making it a little long and making the one end true, what we'll do is we're going to stitch it around so that it connects in all the right spots, and then we'll cut it off and then do our end. So that's kind of the plan right now. Out comes the thread. Everybody's favorite part. So I do sometimes put rubber mats on the floor in here. The only problem with rubber mats on the floor is that if I happen to be working with metal, which is another thing I do, these foam mats are not the best thing in the world to have around with hot sparks flying. So
But fortunately, the outside forge studio is moving along to the point where all my metal work will eventually be done out there. Going to be closing it up so that it actually will be even more weatherproof than it already is. And it'll be lockable, sealable, and heatable. Not that when the forge is running we have a problem with heat. So inside here will be strictly for the leather work, etc. I'll probably and the jewelry bench will be staying in here because that's a different beast altogether. But there'll be no more armor making or smashing bashing in here. Alright, so there's that and that. Just gonna see if I can get relatively close here. So I think that's where I want to start it. It's right about there. I missed some. Hang on a second. Just want to make sure I got all my holes punched. Somebody was messaging me and asking when I'm working in the studio, you know, what is it I listen to music-wise? And so I'll give shouts out to, you know, groups like Fawn, Rituals from Hailing, that general kind of rhythmic percussion sings to me. That's what I prefer. Missed a few, didn't I? Ah! And what do I do for my arthritis? Again, heat, lots of water. There are some things that I take for it, which I won't repeat. Some things that other people have recommended to me, I can't. I'm allergic. So some of the oils and that I just cannot use or be around for that matter. Which is unfortunate because I know people who very much benefit from it. So, okay. So, again, I'm going to do a buried stitch to start. So, I'm going to double up through. Take the stitch, lock down, pull. Oop, don't get caught on anything. One more time, dive through. And it's just around the racetrack. Wait, he's not water forming the cuff. No, I don't. There's very little point. Now, again, I'm just doing a butted stitch on these guys. If you've seen any of my other leather armor, you'll notice that I tend to protect all of my seams with leather strips, made usually of a 2-ounce veggie tanned leather, just to give it that extra bit of protection. It also gives it a much better finished look. I prefer it. But
for a couple of things. This one is, again, I'm trying to antique old soldier this one so that it actually kind of matches the one I've already got. As a tribute to the history of that piece, its former owner, and the individual who modified and came up with the design, which, again, shout out to Rolf, Mr. Longbow. And this is the thing, back in the day, we shared patterns a lot. Whenever we traveled to different events or whatever, and we saw somebody using a piece of equipment that was like, hey, wow, I'd love to have that, and or try that. And that's what we did. We would share the patterns, move them around. I would freely give patterns away, or provide them just basically at the cost. And that's what I'm kind of doing now, is, you know, providing them. And all I'm asking is sort of, any of us can ask really, is just compensation for our time a little bit, and, you know, help making videos like this possible, and sharing the knowledge that we have. Because I fully expect somebody, if I, you know, send them a pattern, they're going to copy that pattern and give it to their friends and move it around. If it works for them, great, you know, that's amazing and that's good. But if they have to modify it and come up with something a little bit different, and the story Rolf told me was that the pattern he got needed to be modified so that he could use it fighting polearm. And totally get that, because that's exactly what I want these for, is fighting polearm and pike spear. I also tend to use my battle axe a bit. I don't use basket hilts on my swords like other SCAers tend to do. And the reason for that was simply after using an open grip with my rebated steel swords, I couldn't go back to using a basket hilt. It felt wrong, and B, it really did feel wrong. The balance was not there. And when I'm teaching fighting and stuff, it's like I say, if I can't do it with a real sword, I won't do it. Not with a rattan one. Or waster, which is what a practice sword, wooden sword, would have been called. Behort, or a number of other words. Now you can see how that's coming together, and you can already see the angle that it's pitching out at, which is exactly what we want all the way around. Again, cuffs, the cuff is important because, get it on my hand here, I mean, that allows us this movement, right, and still gives us protection. Now the funny thing is a lot of the medieval ones, like the period ones I've looked at, actuals, the cuffs are a lot tighter. And the reason for that is simply that they didn't want anything being able to get in here, right? You know, somebody, you're lying on the ground, somebody stabbing you in the hand or whatever. I don't know, but it can happen, right? So, but for SCA combat, we have a tendency of wanting to be able to move our hands around a bit. So that's why our cuffs tend to be a little wider, especially on like the hourglass gauntlets and things that you'll see, than they would have been, right? I'm going to be very glad that I cut this the way I did. Watch my time here, coming up on an hour. So in about 10 minutes, I'm going to probably cut this video, end it wherever I'm at. So I don't run on too much. But it looks like I might actually be able to get this cuff on. And it's kind of cool. I wanted to be able to do this in such a way that you could see the project from beginning to end. Again, like I said previously, and it's probably starting to sound repetitive, but give you an idea of just
how long a project like this can take. Now, that's an actual hands-on time. Again, if you're salming using water forming techniques, you've got to take into consideration those hours. So, I mean, those aren't hands-on hours, but there's still going to be time required in order to complete the project. And I will tally that up at the end when I get this finished. And then, of course, if you're doing 2, double it. At least the hands-on time. You won't have to necessarily double. Well, yeah, I guess. If you're doing it all at once, then it's not too bad. While you're forming at the same time, then you can basically keep your timing right. Oh, I'm lost. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do this all with one thread. As you can see, I'm not going to get all the way around. So again, normally what I do is, in this situation, I'm keeping the thread short because I'm working up above the bench and I don't want to be hooking anything down here. But normally I'd like to try, like I would take the entire circumference of this piece and I would triple it, right, for the length of thread that I'm actually going to use if I want to do it all in one go. You don't have to. You can use shorter pieces. That's exactly what I'm ending up doing here. Again, keeping your stitches tight. But that's a rule of thumb, especially when you're, doing the smaller pieces in that. Like all of these little darts and things. It's basically at least 3 times the length. And then make sure that you're going to give yourself enough leeway at the end so that you can get the needle back in and through so you can bury your thread into the stitches. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll get down to a couple of inches here and then I'm going to cut and bury this one in the next section. Oops. I'm going to do 2 passes. So this one first, and then I'll do a diagonal stitch back. I could do a 3rd pass so that it's actually like a cross stitch, which I think is what he did. All right, I'm getting a little short here, so there we go. I'm going to cut this one here. So I'm just going to double it. So yeah, that's perfect. I'm going to cut it off so I've got enough of a tail that I can bury it in the next section of stitching. I'm going to just go until I've got the cuff stitched on. So, and that'll be the end of the video for today. Like I said, remember to hit that like. Please subscribe. Let's see if we can get our numbers up. It'd be nice to get to like a couple of 100 subscribers, at least in the initial get-go. Eventually, like I said, when we start doing our live streams, the way the restriction works, eventually let's see which way I want to go here. I was going this way, right? It's basically the number of subscribers you have plus a certain number, which I think it's like a half dozen to a dozen. So keep meaning to look that up again, and I keep forgetting to. So. All right. And that's kind of the limit of people that can actually view at a time, until such time as the algorithm or YouTube kicks in and says, yeah, this is legitimate, they're not showing nasty content. Eventually I want to get, like I said, I want to get different cameras in here so that I can shoot something down here maybe, and so people can actually see what I'm doing from overhead, and I can do picture in picture, that kind of thing. Like I said, I've already got an editor which will do all that, so. Also, if people get tired of watching me do the same thing over and over again, I can do things like, you know, speed up for some of it. Won't be able to do that in the live feeds, of course. You'll get the footage raw. Look! I think it's part 3 and no F-bombs. And saying there's no F-bomb doesn't count. I know there are some out there that are very disappointed. And one more, so this stitch is now locked and buried. Now again, the idea too, remember, make your cuff big enough at the bottom, you know, that you can actually get your hand into the piece. That's important. I mean, you want to be able to wear this. So because I was prototyping this, I've definitely made it long enough, and you can see that I've actually got extra here. So if I bring it around, you can see I've actually got extra bit there, so that I'll be cutting this off, and I'll be basically doing my stitches there in the end, and then I'll modify my pattern accordingly. Oops, next one down. I can't find the hole. Oh, no, we're so close. Oops. So the next set I'm going to build after this, I will modify the design, and I will probably add a whole bunch of decorative elements to it, and away it will go. I'm also thinking too that as time goes by, for each subscription number that we get, for the lucky people that actually hit that number, some kind of prizes to be sent out, recognitions, etc. And of course, my undying gratitude somebody asked me again, I was not throwing the names out there, but asked again, so after you get to a certain point, what keeps you going? And I got to admit that, you know, there comes a point where you've done so much of it all that there really is nothing else to do or to reach for. And I have to say, so in that case, what is my passion? Well, my passion is teaching and sharing. It's getting this knowledge out there, getting it out into the hands of the people who will benefit most from it, share it with the people that they're around, and keep it moving. That's my passion. I love teaching. I love sharing. I love doing what I do. And so that is why I'm doing this. Setting people up to succeed, reach their own goals, aspirations, finding success, enjoying their own passion, and realizing they're not alone or crazy. I mean, this stuff appeals to me physically. It also appeals to my geek foo.
my sense of history and love for it. Getting there. 1 hour. Yes, I fixed my clock, so I can actually see it over there ticking away. The Havoc timepiece. Come on. Look, it's starting to look like a gauntlet. Now, here's the thing. Did I cut my... No, it's about perfect. Okay. Tried to eyeball the end so that it was about triple. It's going to be close. Holding it close to my chest instead of out here where you guys can see it. Patience. You can see it. There we go. So I've got 2 stitches left. So before I cut this last one, what I'm going to do is push this underneath like so. Take a look at it. Draw our line. Wait, that doesn't match. Well, actually, it does. Trust me. So, like so. Make sure that fits. Nice. Okay, we're going to be cutting that off after, but right now, what I'm going to do very quickly, borrow our little tiny toy anvil here. Just going to run that out, and I'm going to run that out. For a block, because that way I can get at it. Where do I put you down? Where did I put you? There you are. You see, prototyping this, I'm having to do this kind of on the fly. Once the pattern is fine and I'm happy with it, I'll have all these pre-marked. Now, that's because I happen to like this pattern. Now, if you decide that you have a different thread count that you want, stitch count I should say, not thread count, then by all means change it. Always put your tools down in the same place so you can find them. Don't drop the anvil on the coffee cup. Alrighty. There we go. double that one. So it's coming in tight. Double back. Bring it in there. But look, it didn't match. Yes, it did actually. We are going to run a little over, guys. I apologize. Actually, you know what I forgot to do? That's the wrong spot. That's why it's making it miserable for me at this very moment. You need to go there, go there. There we go. That's the one I want. Perfection. All right. I'm going to give it one more stitch, and then we'll do the cuff. Almost there. Cut. Overkill on the thread this time around. Excuse me. Yeah, we are over, but we are so close to finishing this section. I am just going to finish it. Just because I can. So again, I'm going to bury my thread. Okay. Come on. So it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're going out getting some brewskis or something a little later. Nachos. Nacho man. Celebrating the end of another week. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, I need another 4. I did not count correctly. Candles away, boys. Candles away. So again, remember, share the video. Work along if you want. Don't be afraid to send questions or observations in the comments. Okay, I'm just going to bury this now. Now I'm going to go back afterwards, and probably it's going to take me about 20 minutes, and I'm going to basically do a diagonal stitch all the way around, lock it in, so that there's 2 passes done on this particular piece.
clean it up.
Just burying my stitch now. Burying my thread, I should say. Now again, if I can't, oh yeah, I can. There we go. You see I'm pulling it through. And the stitch is buried. Cut it off with a bit of a tail. And that's it. Lots of maneuver room. Now I find if this is too big, I can take it and I can cut it back and I can shrink it, right? But for right now, this looks fine. I'm happy with this. There we go. That's it for today. So hopefully you found it informative. Cheers. We'll see you in the next.